Imagine giant slugs. Imagine them going inside your mouth. Imagine them injecting memories of dead alien civilizations into your head. Imagine your body seizing up while all this goes down. Imagine you get so hungry you could eat a Feastables. I know. Terrifying. Imagine that slug tickling your brain and making you want to fuse with your neighbor. Look, zombies are one thing. It's the bread and butter of the channel. But extraterrestrial insectoid-like abominations are a whole nother beast, especially when they are entering every orifice of your body to shoot up to your brain as you feel every inch of those disgusting phallic maggots swiftly plowing through your insides. When it comes to previous installments of the Why You Wouldn't Survive series, we've had life forms seizing our biomass to puppet our meat suits for feeding and or culmination purposes, like Halo's Flood, Dead Space's Necromorphs, The Thing's Thing, or hell, even the Blob. But in the case of today, what if we took what was James Gunn's box office failure of a horror comedy parody of classic 80s films like The Night of the Creeps and Shivers and ramped it up beyond an isolated incident within a small redneck town, expanding its thing-like worm assimilation and body snatching to a nationwide or even global catastrophe? What about these parasites from beyond the stars would guarantee your and everyone else's non-survival? Well, let's get into that, as today we are discussing why you wouldn't survive Slither's parasite invasion. Originating from the far reaches of space within a planet of unknown origin, a parasitic species with no name to speak of was carried across the star-studded void via an asteroid composed somewhat of organic materials. Similar to that of A Quiet Place's Death Angels, it headed towards Earth via pure circumstance and no direct intention, landing in the small town of Wheelsy, South Carolina. Having a very low population, this rather small creature would find itself having an easy time to fly under the radar, surviving the high-velocity impact to our planet via residing in its extremely durable egg-like shell, coming out of its containment and slowly dragging its mucousy host body along the soil of the nearby land, residing in what looks like an oversized white caterpillar, leaving behind a creamy, slimy trail, most likely a young form of life of whatever previous planet it invaded, and willingly inhabited the smallest form in order to be transferred between planets more easily. Most notably, this specimen is unlike the creatures we see later as the namesake Slither parasite looking like fast-moving slugs. On the contrary, this one is a queen parasite amongst its kind, only ever labeled as either a long one or the needle due to most of its body resembling that of, well, a needle. Wandering aimlessly, it would eventually be discovered by the unfaithful ex-Marine Grant. Investigating the crash site and slime, Merle Dixon here sees the giant insect with disgust as it cracks open to reveal the needle parasite within. Surprised at the sight of it, he has no time to react before it torpedoes into his chest at the speed of a bullet, quickly burrowing through your insides like a game of dig-dug, piercing through any part of your body that may get in its way. Not taking conventional means like any kind of parasite or infection that follows your bloodstream or anything like that, it will painfully dig its way straight to your brain, where it releases a pulse that immediately eradicates anything about you within your own mind, killing you in that instant and replacing your body with what can only be described as an imperfect duplicate. Once within the brain, the queen needle will instantly retain all knowledge of the person, all their memories, abilities, and history. Although acting a bit frazzled and stilted with some notable bleeding from the eyes and ears, hemorrhaging due to brain hemorrhaging, they will speak somewhat as their host would have previously, not immediately becoming hostile to non-infected personnel in its vicinity unless threatened, electing to go about its host's life semi-normally to not arouse suspicion, discerning all the people within the host's life and plotting out isolated areas with the individual's home, frequented places, or known locations that see the least amount of foot traffic. Its primary prerogative at first will be finding biomass in the form of meat and flesh. Gathering as much as humanly possible, the infected Grant spent one of his only public appearances at a local grocery store, heading straight to the butcher, asking for not one, not five, not a dozen, but the entire stock of ribeye steaks, and then filling up his entire truck with meat, claiming it's all for a cookout. He would then go about finding stray animals and local wildlife to kill them, maim them, and gut them to acquire their flesh, leaving only skin and barely any meat inside left, accumulating as much meat as humanly possible, with one of his first words when he took over the body being meat. During this time of beating its meat together, it will look to start nesting. Having figured out optimal unoccupied spaces, it will gather nesting materials in places like basements and abandoned barns, using the person's skill to block off entry into its feeding and nesting grounds by creating locks, barricades, and more, wrapping rooms in thick plastic to prevent any smells of rot and bodily fluids from getting out and drawing attention to its nest. The queen host will remain under the radar to try and expand its influence by seeking out isolated or solitary people while it hunts for viable meat, making periodic attacks in a certain radius from its breeding area, valuing its secrecy and discretion just as much as its food before it starts to display visible physical symptoms. The longer a queen inhabits a host body, the more they will mutate. While the most important part of the de-survival aspect of this video is how it procreates, it is important to note on how the queen host will change before diving into that biological cesspit, starting from the initial puncture site looking like a slightly concerning bug bite before developing rashes across the torso. The head will begin to swell. Huge warts and tumors will grow on the skin and cranium, eventually becoming tentacles that act as extra limbs, each part of the body being able to stretch like one was made of the gum fruit. These having sharpened appendages being tipped with diamond-hard edges that can slice a human body open and in half in an instant, and able to slice through any animal in one swipe. Its snake-like worm body will slither around at such high speeds it will be hard to hit with ammunition, eventually becoming a hideous, durable killing machine, looking like a vicious amalgamation of science fiction body horror, with its mobile form looking like a centaur mutant from the game Fallout 3. Eventually amassing others into its form to grow exponentially into a gigantic creature, not unlike the master of Fallout 1. All of this so that it can kill any threats and or biological creatures to harvest their flesh for its own purposes, not to eat it and grow its own form. No. The queen host is not where the highest danger emerges from this general threat. It is the creature's offspring that cause a pandemic to possibly spiral into an end-of-world event. These tentacles will also act as sexual reproductive organs, capable of penetrating any organism's flesh, fusing the tentacle into their body on the spot, and doing this to inject larval eggs into the frame of susceptible hosts. The act will cause the victim to convulse and enter a catatonic state as thousands of microscopic eggs are inseminated into your body, taking up residence mostly within your stomach like that of a tapeworm, although others will seek to latch onto other parts of your body to work to mutate you to make sure you do not die during this process. That and your body will be maximized in its potential for incubating thousands of growing parasites, meaning organs will be structured or repurposed to survive the massive toll going on in the body, to make room for the worm womb known as your stomach to expand, becoming extremely elastic to hold as many larvae as biologically possible. Once a victim has been impregnated, the queen host will move them to one of the locations it had marked as a breeding ground. This is outside of its own nesting ground where the queen itself will grow. Breeding grounds will be purely for impregnated hosts to grow on their own, where loads of the meat that had been gathered will be placed around the immobile living incubator. The impregnated being will only have one care in the world, and that is to eat desperately to try and satiate an insatiable hunger, being fed scrupulous amounts of rotting, decaying, and raw meat, roadkill, decaying corpses, all the meat you could find at the market, you name it. If you are impregnated by this parasite, you are going to eat any meat that is thrown in front of you, no matter how disgusting it is, until eventually you become a living water balloon, and that's not an exaggeration, being just a filled up tick with only your face recognizable, with all of your limbs encroached by the large amount of bloated flesh growing outwards. Your hands will only be there, expanding to be over 10 feet tall, 6 feet wide, and 5 feet long. You will look like a meaty bounce house. Even at this point, the parasite-ridden person will not dwell on their abysmal state, no matter how painful it is. The only thing they will care about will be them proclaiming how hungry they are, until eventually they say that the creatures within them are tearing them apart. The queen, once their main body has been spotted, will lead all sentient organic life to one of these breeding grounds to find its flesh incubator, impregnated with thousands of parasites. Once discovered, the queen will relay a mental signal to the parasites slithering into the incubation body to hatch from the meat balloon, causing the body to rip open and explode to unleash thousands of these huge worms out like a wriggling flood. Each individual parasite will, at all times, seek out any organic life that they can detect, human or animal, using its slime to cling to any surface and its small stature to finagle themselves through any entry point, and then force their way into any available orifice, i.e. mouth, large open wounds, or even rectums, to take control of a person's brain. If these holes of yours are not covered in the exact moments that these worms get to you, they will begin burrowing into your body and immediately cause you to start seizing as your entire body convulses. You cannot stop them once they have started their infiltration. After a parasite has infiltrated a host body, the host themselves will shake aggressively with their eyes rolling back and basically their mind going blank. The body will imitate death for a brief period of time, making nearby traumatized individuals think the parasites only act to kill, until eventually the corpse comes back to life after a few minutes, akin to a zombie attacking non-infected people. Although not initially hostile, the infected person will start to talk to healthy specimens in an attempt to make themselves seem okay and normal. The person, for a brief period, will retain control, this being less than a minute, thinking their consciousness is still their own. But their newfound hunger is so overpowering that it overrides all decision-making until the hive mind eventually seizes all motor functions. The worm inhabiting the body to use their important memories with prominent but stilted speech patterns like RFK Jr., who also has a worm in his brain, and stiff, almost rigor mortis-stricken movement. They won't be tricking anyone, but that will probably not matter considering a majority of people will be initially body snatched in quick succession, distracting the healthy or luring them into a false sense of security or into a trap so the infant slugs have time to sneak attack your holes, or for mutated variants to crop up and attack armed personnel. All hosts will eventually think and speak in unison. Parasites born for the queen will act as a hive mind intelligence, with the queen coordinating them all at every given moment, having them speak and act and strategize as one entity across thousands of bodies. All their history, knowledge of former alien civilizations, and their mounting intelligence on humanity. Their threats upon reanimation will be very minimal, as they can barely control motor movement and speaking coherent sentences. However, over a brief period of time, they will operate enough to use tools, weapons, vehicles, and their own host's personality and appearance to effectively hunt and or survey areas for prime targets, to either kill them for their meat, infect them to make them into hunters or surveillance meat drones, breaking defenses and destroying structures to make everyone easier to infect, or to bring victims to their queen to have her embed thousands of more slug eggs into their body, attempting to bait or manipulate people to get susceptible victims to believe them in order to attack them easier or lure them into traps. These bodies can be easily dispatched though. They don't get increased durability. However, their injury threshold will be non-existent. They will not be debilitated just by being shot in the arm or something. They are killable by any conventional means that can flatline a normal human. However, the parasite can simply simply eject itself from the body if the slug is unharmed, as was the case when we had a shotgun blowing off half of a person's head and the pest simply squirmed out of the head hole to find another host to go take over. We spoke previously about how these alien parasites can mutate bodies, incubators to be perfect breeding hives, queen bodies to be killing machines. For drone hosts, after just a few minutes, they'll have converted the stomach to produce highly toxic and corrosive acid, akin to the spitter from Left 4 Dead 2. Seemingly that these creatures are a highly evolved variant of a tapeworm, considering its focus on the stomach to transform it for multiple different purposes. They will spit this material at high velocities to hit targets and swell their flesh to debilitate them, singeing skin and blasting body parts to cripple victims so small larvae can easily creep their way down your throat or up your ass, or even newly opened dissolved flesh. Some groups even choose to not infect hosts on the spot, but to instead gang up on victims, hang their heads over them to all vomit out these acids on a victim all at once and dissolve their flesh hellaciously, melting away their muscles to make them unable to move, but able to feel everything. Perfect living tissue to be devoured without it being able to move. Probably the worst way to go for you and anyone else. Feeling every part of you being feasted upon in a paralytic state, all having a drive to feed into the mind, body, and diabolical soul of the queen needle, to develop, as one victim puts it, a conscious disease. The second the larva attaches to a body, it will begin to inject memories of the queen host into the brain of the victim, as an attempt to create a widening hive mind intelligence, seeing visions and experiencing everything the queen had experienced in its over 1 billion year-long lifespan across countless worlds, retaining its collective knowledge to maximize its hunt across the stars. Having conquered many alien planets and bodies, the queen needle, possibly being offspring of another queen, sent out to scour the cosmos for worlds to devour and reproduce within, like a swarm of intergalactic locusts. It incorporates all knowledge, stories, and abilities for each life form consumed in mind, body, and soul, absorbed into a single mind state for each queen needle. In very rare cases, will some people be able to fight off their body entering a seizure-like state to pull out the slug going into them. These lucky few will retain the knowledge implanted in their minds by the queen and know their intentions in history, albeit with a large amount of mental fog and a lot of mental history omitted because it was a brief time. These instances may be the only hope we have at survival to know what these beings are, how to defeat them, and the advanced knowledge that they have. Yes, we could pull a light version of Independence Day and use their stuff against them, but just simply knowing of their intentions and how destructive they are will not be nearly enough, especially in the grander scheme of what they can and are doing. Infected humans are just 3 different forms of what's going to be looking to bang you, eat you, or throw you in the trash. The slugs themselves will be hellaciously difficult to avoid no matter where you go. Thousands and then eventually millions or even billions of them will flood into every nook and cranny across the world possible in order to breach any area through vents, pipes, crawl spaces, and more, to infest any water supply, to endlessly reproduce and have the numbers to ensure infection and make sure no living thing can hide from their indomitable masses, polluting and penetrating anyone they can find. Any man, woman, child, and even animal. As seen in the film, zombie deers are even possible to overwhelm any man, with tumored flesh and tentacles to attack and infect or bisect for flesh. Any creature could be modified to be a killing machine for the queen. Imagine a dog, bear, hell, even birds flying overhead by the dozens to shit out more slugs that will land down your throat. Any and all animals larger than these slugs in any capacity are fair game to indoctrinate, mutate, and use to annihilate, becoming just like the 3 forms of parasitic humans: breeders, drones/soldiers, and queens. Each recipient is looking to either eat any meat they can find to bloat up, find any threats to alert the hive mind of all infested species, or find suitable hosts for a current or new queen needle, eating skin, blood, meat, and even bone to quell the tapeworm-like hunger they now carry, wiping out any sentient life and gutting them in every shape and form possible to feed the ultimate goal of the queen. As stated before with the necromorphs, the thing, the flood, and even the blob, the queen host will choose a domicile or hiding space to have its own biomass grow with other flesh, looking like its center body had melted and fused with its surroundings to only have a face and multiple tentacles in a womb-like room, webbing out across all surfaces, making a sensory state in this kind of domicile. Once any and all threats are extinguished within its detectable area and all those that it controls with each life form it can see and hear from, then the queen will enter its final known evolutionary state, calling in all of its least combat or mobile-ready drones to willingly come and slap their bodies directly onto its fleshy mounds, almost being orgasmic for them, immediately causing them to start dissolving and fusing to the queen's biomass, looking like when you sit directly on a leather couch on a hot day with your skin exposed, it kind of does that but on a dissolving molecular level, fusing with the flesh of more and more bodies, as well as any meat its infected drones bring to it, tentacles reaching out and wriggling about to grab and slice apart any non-slug-based life forms that may come near it. It is unknown what may come of it if it were to consume the biomass of more than just a small redneck town, but it's safe to say it could spiral quickly into a giant abomination spanning miles wide with a statewide hive mind network. There is one huge weakness in the beginning, though, in regards to the queen and its hold on the host body's mind. Whomever the queen's host mind cherished the most in their life will still hold that particular person in high regard and try to give them special treatment, using its slug drones in a cult-like fashion to capture this specific person and prepare them for impregnation, even setting sensual mood music in contained areas to get the job done in a fitting way for human procreation, to create the most parasites possible in this loved one. This has two goals for the queen host: to both give the original mind what they wanted most before it is fully eradicated, and also to destroy any emotional connections the hive mind may be manipulated by and allow the alien to have no mental restrictions over its own biomass going forward, as was seen with Grant when his wife attempted to trick him to get close and kiss and then kill him. That temporary dropping of the guard to try and kiss her allowed a chain of events to occur to lead to a Hank Hill level plot device where the queen sucked up a tank of propane and exploded from a bullet to its body, burning the queen as her only weakness, and in turn destroying the hive mind, killing all slugs born from her, and in turn killing all host body humans and animals in a large mile radius that originated from this queen. Think of it like a head vampire. When you kill it, all of its vampire denizens will turn back to normal people. Except in this case, those that were infected do not turn back. They just become dead bodies. The sheer amount of brain damage from the slug getting inside the brain would prevent a person from being cured per se, but at least they would just be a dead body and not coming back. However, this is indeed not the end of the queen needle threat and in turn the slugs. James Gunn, being ahead of the Marvel post-credit scenes by 3 years, had a post-credit scene in this movie, showing that after the first body had died and all its flesh was obliterated, the needle form of the queen parasite will remain due to its durable nature. Remember, it could survive plummeting to Earth at thousands of miles per hour, waiting for any organic life form to come waltzing by it, for it to inject itself into again. Oh no, it just had to be a cat that came by to lick the dead dude's brain. No, poor kitty. And then that cat will now be hyper-intelligent, retaining the intellect of mankind that it knows, as well as countless alien civilizations that it had consumed before. But now as a cat that no one will probably suspect as it restarts its cycle all over again, probably suppressing any physical symptoms and doing more, this time with more precision and less conspicuous means, allowing its second attack to be more widespread with more parasites, infected hosts, and even more queens. It'll be way more deadly than this tiny podunk town. So that's the synopsis of the creatures and what they did and what they can do in a small little area. But what if it got worse because of one cat reaching a high population city or metropolitan area? And how would the knowledge of gathered individuals aid in their world domination and absorbing all of us into its biomass? What would the creation of multiple queens and a more coordinated effort mean for us? What would a biomass of thousands or millions or even billions of people and animals mean in the end? It is mentioned that they have existed for billions of years, so some tiny little town in the middle of nowhere would not be the end of a hive mind capable of taking over Earth. I mean, they've taken over countless alien worlds. Just a few guys with guns and explosions would not be the end-all be-all for this intergalactic invasive species. Not just some propane in one explosion would end their threat of their kind of capability and magnitude. In fact, infecting a human in a town like this would work to its best advantage, making multiple wombs in multiple towns over time by choosing towns with the least potential of alarming the wider human population, all to have such an expansive influence in numerous scattered areas as the queen either finds the right conditions to create another queen, probably as to not quarrel with it over dominion, as I'm sure they would be territorial and could only keep a decent enough grip over a certain amount of area. Their hive mind intelligence might be stretched too thin if they take over too many people, so multiple queens need to be born from the flesh of more humans, with thousands of drones to feed and or work for them. Each queen will actively seek and try to find important high-profile individual humans to indoctrinate, using the knowledge of their hosts and infected drones to discern who that may be and what areas typically contain these leaders, sending slugs through entry points to reach them and easily infect them, like getting to the president through the plumbing of the White House, to use their status to infect other high-ranking officials to make decisions for the public that only benefit the slugs, that and distract the public from their influence, or to make conditions worse for people and better for them, polluting police forces, armed guards, and entire armies, making sure buildings are more easily accessible in a police slug state. In the early stages, even if their initial invasion is somehow discerned by military, governmental, or plot armored efforts, hypothetically speaking though, the queen will already have executed my previous notions. Multiple slug-related zones, numerous queens coordinating with one another through telepathic methods. While it's very possible queens can be competitive or even hostile towards one another, they would work at least by expanding their species' influence and continued existence. Yes, they could be fighting each other, but at this point they're just trying to consume as much as possible, and then they can fight along the way, preventing large-scale fire bombings from militaries, preventing grassroots local militias from arming themselves, and making sure there are no nationwide alerts to spot signs of infected people, sending out messages that contradict anything to make sure people do not know the entire scale of what is going down. The queens themselves will be easily able to kill anything they find, eventually developing to be hard enough to withstand all firepower. While they will eventually become immobile in their nesting grounds, they will grow out exponentially to become extremely resistant to damage, becoming mountain-sized, hell, maybe even Mount Everest-sized, choosing to use drones to build impenetrable defenses around their queen's bountiful flesh mounds, maybe making bulletproof armor to make sure the flesh can never be harmed. The queen will eventually elect to add a fourth unit to the slug-ridden human masses, while more and more poor individuals will be unwilling participants, becoming in inflation fetishist wet dreams, and while others are just there to spot threats or potential biomass fodder, the queen can elect to choose the most worthy participants to start mutating them into variants similar to its mobile form, with sharpened tentacles, beefy muscles and strength, and stretchy limbs. Maybe even having weaker bodies that don't have really any strength or speed, and having them fuse with other drones to transform them into tankier abominations, capable of withstanding gunfire and slicing apart squadrons of armed people, doing so by the hundreds to ensure resistances are quashed and their flesh to be served up on a platter to tanky variants, to breeding ground pregnant forms, or even the queen itself. It could be that entire states across the United States could be lost to each queen needle's influence. Once threats are eliminated, all weak bodies that are being controlled will be called home to her flesh to fuse and expand, showing no quota in its meaty growth. Leaders and armies crippling in time, pilots taking slug-infested bodies across international waters to ensure every landmass across the planet will be perfectly capable of being another feasting, breeding, and killing ground. The slugs even have the potential to go into the oceans of Earth and take over all aquatic life. Imagine a giant shark, or hell, even a whale, just attacking boats and shorelines to puke the combined mass of their bodies equal to the amount of slugs that they could be carrying, with that maximized impregnation potential we saw in humans, but now in giant whales. The slugs can be in anything and come from anywhere. The biomass of the queen, or queens, eventually stretching to overlap much of the planet in sectors, to basically become fractured brethren moons from dead space. The entire planet will leave nothing behind but multiple hive minds wanting more and more meat and doing anything they can to consume until there is no kind of meat left across our little blue ball in the void of space. Us eventually being nothing but another memory, another sentient race out in the universe that will briefly be seen in a flashback by another alien race. But our human forms meaning nothing to them except being known as yet another species exterminated and harvested to this unnamed parasitic universal threat. That about ends this look into the slithery world of the slug parasites. Without a doubt, you would die in a horrific way due to their influence, being meat, a pregnant balloon to burst, or a host with stolen memories, having each person basically being an invasion of the body snatcher snitcher looking to oust you, sabotage your weapons and homes to allow parasites to flood in, and more. This is a snowball effect that just wasn't given the proper means to reach its full potential, since this was in the context of a horror comedy. They just had to let things go back to the status quo. It is funny to note, though, that the slither slugs are a very hostile species that is largely avoided by the greater galactic community, only seen once elsewhere as a part of the collection in the Collector's Lair in Guardians of the Galaxy, considered extremely dangerous due to their mind control and potential that they were seen as trophies to this guy that collected dangerous oddities. But if they got out, oh boy. And this also confirms the Slither slugs are in the same universe as all of Marvel's properties. So just imagine all the Marvel heroes and villains controlled by them, which makes me think we got a Marvel Zombies video being worked on right now. Soon. That about wraps up this look into, quite frankly, another pretty terrifying why you wouldn't survive scenario. What do you think? Is there something I missed or should have explained more? Let me know down below and what you want to see next. Make sure to support the channel by contributing to me on Patreon as a patron, or becoming a YouTube channel member, or chip in a buck or two over on my second channel, WSG Streams, during my weekly live streams of Left 4 Dead 2, where we play with friends and fans. Until next time, I'm Zadcast, aka Wow Such Gaming. Never forget to stay happy, stay healthy, keep your holes covered, and most importantly, stay well. If you didn't notice, I have been sick, but here is a cover of Slither. Yeah, here comes the water, comes to wash away the sins of you and I. This time you'll see, like holy water, it only burns you faster than you'd ever try. This time with me.